Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. Now, as we are definitely in the rainy season, we are definitely in the hurricane season, and we want to make sure that everybody is as prepared for disaster as they possibly can be, especially the visually impaired and the blind. And we take a look inside Unique Not Different with Shamla Maharaj this morning. Shamla?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Unique Not Different with me, Shamla. Today, I have Mr. Kenneth Surratt, who is the Executive Officer of the Blind Welfare Association. And as Roka said, we are talking about disaster preparedness. But before I begin, today happens to be Mr. Surratt's birthday, and he's very proud of his age. He's 56 years young. So I would have to say happy birthday to Mr. Surratt. And Mr. Surratt, happy birthday. How are you doing?
I am doing fine. Today's a wonderful day, and I born on a Tuesday also.
Oh, you born on a Tuesday, so
Yes.
you have to double celebrate then.
Yes.
Awesome.
I'm just enjoying life and health.
Awesome. But before we begin, what advice would you give to anybody, I guess inspiration to reach that age, because we go through different phases in life.
What we observe with persons who are blind, a lot of my friends died under 60 years, and it's because of lifestyle. So I'll suggest that people, keep a kind heart and positive mind, and you should be okay. And watch your diet.
Awesome. I guess mental health relates to physical health, and
Yes.
so nothing works
Yes.
inside. So let us go back to the topic, right? We are talking about disaster preparedness because these days we are experiencing a lot of rain, flooding, even earthquakes, right? I think which is the most dangerous. Now, I would not like to assume. So therefore, I'm going to ask in terms of communication process, right? Is there any gaps you see that during communication or preparedness that does not facilitate the blind community?
Okay, the first thing I want to focus on when it comes to natural disasters is that the person who is blind must first be trained or given correct tips. Like, for instance, we have persons who are blind at their home. And if there's an emergency like a fire, we tend to train persons who are blind how to leave their homes safely. We also do it at our workplace. And once we do that, like for instance, our workplace, we try to ensure that persons can leave our compound or different compounds within 3 minutes. And based on fire service, looking at our mobility, they are very impressed with persons who are blind and their ability to leave their compound safely. But there are persons who get blind later in life. And that is a challenge because they sometimes scared to walk. So it's how do we train people in their homes to leave it safely? Because sometimes a lot of persons with disability sometimes die in a fire because they were not able to leave their home safely or get the support to leave at home. And in a disaster, sometimes if it's an earthquake or a fire, sometimes each person for themselves, so they forget you. I remember we were at Costa at one time, and the lecturers will tell you if there's an emergency, don't forget these two blind persons. And there was smoke coming through the vent in the AC unit at one time, and everybody left. And then they started thinking about what about Surratt and Lakan. But good thing we knew and we learned the place how to exit safely, and we were also outside, and there were no injuries caused. So my key thing is to start with you, the individual, learn your mobility skills so that you could leave the place of danger to a place of safety instantly within that 3 minutes.
So, well, I have two questions coming out of this, right? That you mentioned, but I'll ask you this one. You mentioned that the fire service was impressed, right? Is it that you are saying that the different, like for example, disaster management, fire service, police, and so on, are they involved with or are you involved with them, or have a collaboration with them in terms of the training process and how to deal with persons who are blind and visually impaired during a disaster, or even
Well, yes, we've been working with the ODPM to sensitize them how to interact with persons who are blind. That is going at a slow pace because I have a concern with their up. So there's another aspect of disaster. You need to communicate that disaster to persons who are blind. And if your application or if you're on television, you show a disaster, but you don't have proper description or verbal communication, the person who is blind could be left out of that communication. So how do you communicate, especially at the television level, is to make sure whatever text you have on the screen, that is communicated verbally. Sometimes we will say, see number on the screen. I am blind now. In a disaster, we have some challenges here. Read every single thing that you are communicating visual. So that is one aspect of that communication. If you have an application for smartphones, make sure it is accessible for persons who are blind, who use screen readers or braille display, or person who use color contrast, because there's a low vision person out there, and that person must be able to change the color contrast on the app, because not everybody can read black and white. So or vice versa. So persons who are blind use the application differently, and there are different categories of visual impairment. People believe that when you are blind, you can't see at all, but there is a spectrum.
I think this will not only help persons who are blind and visually impaired, but persons who have a learning disability as well, or persons who cannot read. You know,
Yes.
we have a lot of persons who, adults especially, who cannot read, and we are not sensitized about that as much, but there's definitely that could be community. I guess within your scope, right? Have you been reaching out, like for example, to the media, in order to have training process media, the different authorities, and how receptive are they in terms of response?
I think they've been very receptive, because we have a program at close to 90 minutes program that we train people how to interact with persons who are blind. And once anybody, it is at no cost. So if you want to participate, in addition to fire service and ODPM, if there's any group in this country like the Regional Corporation, the Blind Welfare Association, offer this training how to interact with persons who are blind at no cost. So you could reach out to us, and we'll have someone either do it virtually or come on your side and have it done. And there's where I want to focus also. So there's a disaster. We have to move someone from point A to a safe location. If it is an earthquake, I do expect a level of, there's where you need to move quickly. So there's not the fanciness about my name is so on, so on, so on. You just need to move quickly. So the disaster is dependent on what kind of disaster. If there's a disaster like a storm pending and it coming and we're going to hit Trinidad, we have more time to give the fancy action. So once we move the person from point A, the disaster point, to a location, we want to make sure that that spot is accessible. So we make simple suggestion like, if it's a disaster center, put the person who is blind as close as possible to the washroom so they could be as independent as possible. So they could learn the environment. So they free up time for the person who's given assistance to other persons who need it most. So the key thing with the person who's blind, we want it to be mobile, we want it to be properly oriented, so that you can do as much as possible for yourself, because in a disaster, resources are limited. And it's not only talking like food and clothes and shelter, we are talking about assistance. So if that person who is blind could be as mobile as possible, could be oriented with their surrounding as quickly as possible, in other words, once they learn that blindness skills, it will help in a disaster.
You mentioned that want to learn, meaning that it's an option and not necessarily an obligation, right?
Yes, yes.
So in terms of demographic, right? Are you aware, like have an estimate on where blind persons are located in the event of a disaster, let's say statistically, in order for the authorities to know? Yeah.
So what we do, each welfare officer at the blind welfare is in charge of 2 regional corporations. So that welfare officer will have a list of names of persons who are registered with the Blind Welfare Association. So if there's a pending disaster, we do that phone communication to let the person know, look, there's a storm coming or whatever it may be. Or based on the rainfall, we'll have ideas of the places that may flood, or the clients who are flooded out, and give them that early warning sign through our network within the Blind Welfare Association. We also encourage persons who are blind to register with your regional corporation, because inside every regional corporation, there's a disaster unit. So we encourage them to link up there, Familiarize yourself with your local government representative, your parliamentarian. Be visible so that they will not forget you. It is easy in a disaster when things are hot, people could forget you. Make sure, please remind them, I am visually impaired, I am totally blind. These are some of the needs. So we want to encourage persons who are blind how to be self-advocates.
Awesome. And how do persons reach out to the Blind Welfare Association in case they want to collaborate or, understand and get involved in the training process that you mentioned earlier?
So first of all, you can WhatsApp us at 395-3086. You can email us at ttbwa1914@gmail.com. You can call our regular phone line 624-4675, or you can inbox us on our Facebook page, Tobago Blind Welfare Association. Or you could walk in at any one of our branches and chat with one of our managers. And our branches are San Fernando, 121 Coffee Street, Port of Spain, 118 Duke Street, Port of Spain, Tobago, Fairfield Complex, Tobago, and Santa Cruz, Paxville, Santa Cruz.
Mr. Surratt, it's always a pleasure. You always articulate yourself very on point. And, I want to say thank you so much for your service. And you've been doing a lot for the blind and even the disabled community in general, in terms of sensitization, awareness, and inclusion. So thank you very, very much for your time and your expertise in this area. I appreciate it.
So thank you very much for having me. And, we need to work as a team collectively, as we need to make Trinidad and Tobago great. No one must be left behind in a disaster. We need to help and extend that service to each and every one. We must try our best to have no casualties as much as possible. So thank you very much.
Awesome, and happy birthday again.
Thank you.
Awesome, and guys, with that being said, I want to say thank you so much for tuning into this week's segment of Unique Not Different. I will be off for 2 weeks because, as you know, TTT has the exclusive right of our Olympics this year. So I want to wish you an enjoyable 2 weeks of viewing the Olympics. And I'll be back in the next 2 weeks. And as I always say, be good, do good. Bye, everyone.